Traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy, co-founder of Speed Up Trader. Today, we're going to be doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Overall, I want to show you guys this amazing view. You know, one of the things that you guys take advantage of here in the US, I've been traveling around the world for, I want to say about 10 years or so now. You know, here in the US, we don't really have as many restrictions, whether or not you believe the coronavirus hype or you don't believe the coronavirus hype. I personally believe that at the beginning we were a little bit afraid of, we didn't know what we were dealing with. And now it kind of seems with over a 99% survival rate that it's not as bad as it used to be, even though, they allow the protests, but they don't allow people on the beach. How does that make sense? But one of the things I wanted to say is here in the US, we have a lot more freedom and opportunity than a lot of other countries. And I see it firsthand because you guys know I'm mainly in Colombia. We got businesses down there and all of Latin America, so I just want to share that with you guys because we're here enjoying this beautiful view, and you guys are able to do this as well. If you guys just stay at one of these hotels, they give you a wristband, you can go on the beach. It's beautiful. Overall, on Monday, Boeing surged 14%. The Fed Aviation Administration gave them permission to continue tests on their 737 MAX flights. If you guys don't remember, there was a huge fiasco. 2 planes went down, a lot of people died. So now they're starting to be able to continue. Boeing is a big company, a big part of the US economy as well, so that's really big news. There's a lot of news as well, a lot of chatter about a stronger than expected jump in the May pending home sales, which is great as well. Tuesday, consumer confidence and economic data continued to improve, which brought an end to the quarter two. We have 12 months in a year. Every 3 months is considered a quarter, so June technically marks the end of the second quarter, and that ended the quarter on good news because obviously we've had horrible economic news going the last few months since the quarantine started. Wednesday, markets were mixed. We had increasing investor optimism, but we also had news that a safe and effective COVID-19 vaccine may be possible as well, which gave a lot of people, a lot of optimism. Thursday, I have here U.S. economy created jobs at a record clip in June with more restaurant and bars reopening. I also read an article. If you guys, read the news at all, or, you might come here to get your news, right? Just to get a quick brief of everything because everything's so politicized every day now on the TV. But they're expecting only just 1 out of 5 restaurants to actually survive this whole coronavirus thing. So literally, imagine the amount of workers that are going to be out of work. A lot of these younger people, a lot of people that rely on maybe 2 jobs working at restaurants. So things reopening is definitely a good thing. Now, the news that came out on Thursday was that due to the fact that the U.S. created the jobs at the record clip, there's now further evidence that we actually may start getting over the recession, which is great news. Overall for the week, U.S. stocks are higher. The Dow went up 3.24%, still negative 9.5% for the year. S&P 500 still 3.12% negative for the year. For the week, it was up 4.02%. And the NASDAQ, which is up over almost 14% positive for the year, went up 4.61% this week. In international markets, the European markets are generally more positive. The DAX, which is the one out of Germany, was the biggest winner of them all at 3.62%. Spain and Italy also had the markets go up over 3% as well. In Latin American, Canadian markets, the index in Santiago was the biggest winner at 5.29%. Africa and the Middle East, mixed. The only positive one, Saudi Arabia and South Africa were both positive. South Africa was the biggest winner of them all at 1.62%. In the Far East, Asia and Australia, China went up 5.81%, whereas Malaysia went up 4.33%. We got some traders out there. The Philippines went up 2.92%. And Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency news, Bitcoin far lower this week. Well, I shouldn't say far lower, but it's definitely way below the 10,000. Everybody was talking about the halving and how we should see this huge surge afterwards. That didn't happen. We're still under 10K for the week. It went down 0.36% at $9,090.21. Finance and banking news, the U.S. Fed, the central bank of the United States, started their bond purchases from corporate companies, about 794 total. Verizon, Apple, AT&T, and the U.S. divisions of Daimler, Volkswagen, and Toyota account for about 10% of the amount of money that was spent. So the government is literally just buying private companies' debt now. But they plan to buy $215 billion of debt already issued, $500 billion of already issued bonds, newly issued bonds. And the goal, they say, is to be able to maintain the liquidity market for the corporate debt, ensures able access to capital despite the economic downturn, is what they're saying. So now the government's going to have their cookie jar and everything. Their hand in the cookie jar. Argentina capital controls are hiding the reaction to the Argentine peso, as most governments do. They're not making the right decision there. Right now it's about 70. It's gone up from 20, 30 to 70 in the past year and a half, the Argentine peso. If they actually remove the limit, the artificial limit that they set by the government, they call it the blue dollar down there in the black market. What they would actually be able to do is devalue their currency, and then their exports would rise, because when a currency actually devalues, the products from that country become a lot cheaper, right? Because if our dollar stays strong, for example, and their products go, the value of their dollar, of their peso, goes down, then obviously it's cheaper for us to buy from them, and we'll buy from them instead of another country. But obviously they're not doing that. The Brazil real, how they say in Brazil, nearly lost 5% in quarter two, which is the worst quarterly loss in 17 years. At one point, it was thought that due to the fact that it's such a big economy, more than anything, it's one of the biggest in the world. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's the 8th largest in the world. I'll have to don't quote me on that, but it is definitely the largest in Latin America. It's Brazil, Mexico, then Argentina, and Colombia. It was thought at one point that everybody would use the real to be able to do business in Latin America, right? To kind of transfer and buy things, but everybody there is still using dollars for the most part, and that definitely doesn't seem like it's going to happen now with the value of the real going down after all the interest rate drops from the central bank. Commodities, U.S. fracking powerhouse and pioneer Chesapeake Energy is now filing for bankruptcy protection. They were once the nation's number 2 natural gas producer, and they actually revolutionized the fracking industry. It transformed the U.S. into the world's largest oil and natural gas producer. China is taking advantage of the low oil prices. They have about 73 million barrels of oil on 59 ships off the northern coast. That's about 3/4 of the demand of the world. Now, the U.S. is the largest consumer. We use the most oil, but we also produce within Texas, North Dakota, we produce oil inside the U.S. border, so we don't import as much as China. China is the biggest importer of oil. U.S. crude for the week, 4.75% positive. It went to $40.32. It's still down over 34% for the year. International Brent is up 4.33%. It went down to 35.21% negative for the year. And gold futures above 1,800 an ounce for the first time in 8 years. I don't know if you guys remember, I did a lot of videos talking about the best investments for the year. Always talked about gold and silver. Again, for educational purposes only. We're not trading advisors, right? We don't trade people's money, but I want you guys to learn that the time to get in isn't when the chaos breaks, it's actually just before, and we would have been able to get a much lower price before rather than now that everything's surging due to the fear of what's going on with the coronavirus. In India, gold is also hitting an all-time high as well. In India, if you guys didn't know, gold is extremely popular in India. They use it as wealth preservation, as gifts when they have these weddings, the huge weddings, they give away the gold. And so it's definitely very important there, and it hit a record high there as well, which is going to be for more things to come, because I don't think this is going to be the end of it. We might get a little bit of a retracement, but for the most part, I think the trend is now to the upside. In China, as most things in China, they found 83 tons of fake gold that they use for collateral for over $2.8 billion in loans over 5 years, or 14 financial institutions that lended it to a major gold jewelry company in none other than Wuhan, China, where the coronavirus came from. And the amount of gold would be equal to 22% of China's annual gold production and 4.2% of their state gold reserves in 2019. Can you imagine that? So that's a lot of fake stuff. Precious metals are higher this week. Gold went up 0.16% to $1,775. Silver went up 1.22% to $18.12. In political news, China's parliament on Tuesday did approve the new security legislation for Hong Kong, violating the treaty that they signed with the UK that they were going to allow it to be an autonomous zone for much longer. This obviously it comes right after the often violated pro-democracy protests in the city last year, and that might actually be what prompted China to actually go ahead and pass the law. Venezuela and the U.S., by the way, also removed the special status of Hong Kong as well. So now Hong Kong was, I say was, because I don't think it's going to be anymore, was the 5th largest financial hub in the world. We got New York, we have London, Tokyo, if I'm not mistaken, Singapore, and then it was Hong Kong. So we'll see, they're probably going to drop quite a bit on that list. Venezuela's embattled ruler Nicolás Maduro is denied access to accessing $1 billion of their gold reserves held in the Bank of England after a court in England stated that they did not recognize Maduro as the president. They recognized Juan Guaidó, and they said, Venezuela, that their intentions were to sell the gold to purchase health care supplies through the UN. Changes to the Russian constitution. President Putin now is going to be in power until 2036 with an approval, if you can believe the Russian government, of 78%, people casting votes in favor. The additional amendment also grants immunity to presidents of criminal prosecution. So he not only has taken power to be able to stay in, but he also made sure that they can't prosecute him after the fact. That is, of course, if the next president doesn't change the law and everybody votes on it. In economic news, stronger than expected jump in home pending sales in May. It went up by 44.3%, the highest monthly gain since they've been keeping records of this since 2001. The National Association of Realtors. There's other results that there's another sign of a rebound in housing and a potential rebound in the overall economy. Housing, selling, construction, all that is a big part of the economy. Now, obviously, if you remember, we're in technically an official recession due to the coronavirus. U.S. economy added 4.8 million jobs in June, most since the government started keeping track of this in 1939. This is due to the gradual easings of all the quarantines of the coronavirus. You know, people are going back to work, businesses are starting to open again. Payrolls rebounded at 2.5 million in May after falling a historic 20.6 million in April, and the employment is still 14.8 million jobs under the pre-pandemic levels. The jobless rate did fall 1.1% to 13.3% in May as more workers returned to work. Chile's unemployment hit 11.2% between March and May, the government reported. Again, the economy down there in Chile, if you don't know, is the only first world country in Latin America, the only country that's allowed to actually come into the United States from Latin America without a visa as well. So they have a very prosperous economy. They're saying that the economy is ravaged, obviously, due to the coronavirus and the quarantines, and this was the formerly most prosperous South American nation's economy recently. Before, in the 1900s, Argentina is where it was at. Japanese manufacturers' confidence sank in Q2 to a level not seen since the 2009 GFC, the global financial crisis. There's extensive damage, obviously, due to the coronavirus. They slipped into a recession for the first time in 4.5 years in Q1, and they're saying that they're going to suffer the deepest post-war slump in a current business quarter. In corporate news, Tesla went public 10 years ago at just $17. They're now at over $1,000 a share. If you would have invested $100,000. Obviously, it's great to look back, right? This is one of the things I always talk about when it comes to learning how to trade, because you can always say you did that, or, oh yeah, it was easy to do this and that, and I would have maybe, if you would have invested something like $100,000 in the Tesla stock at $17, it would be worth over $5 million today. The stock has risen over 5,800%, and now they're actually valued more than Toyota, which is the largest car company in the world, makes a profit generally every year. Tesla sells some cars, not a lot of cars, nowhere near the amount that Toyota does, and they don't even make a profit yet either. NPC International, which is the largest operator of Pizza Huts in the world and over 385 Wendy's stores, has filed for bankruptcy protection. They are going to keep their businesses open while they are in the bankruptcy protection. They operate 27 states, over 40,000 people, and it's another casualty due to the quarantine. In trade news, the pandemic is now reinforcing the protectionist argument that mainly Trump has brought global to the main stage. He's saying that it can deprive people, this is the stance, right, that it can deprive people of essential medical protection and disrupt food supplies and threaten jobs. If you guys don't remember, that during the quarantine, all of our antibiotics in the U.S. is actually made in India and China. And there was a situation, now there's positive studies of the hydroxychloroquine drug to be able to treat it for coronavirus. They made it in India and they didn't want to send it to the US even though we ordered it due to the fact that they needed it for their own people, they said. So this is now starting to escalate. Trump wants to cut ties with the U.S. The EU is planning barriers for state-backed investment firms from China and elsewhere to buy things in Europe, mainly companies. And China is also demanding that the food that they receive, that they buy from Europe, is virus-free. Kind of ironic, no? Since the virus came from, like, as Trump says, China. UK now passed the point of no return. They now have less than 6 months to be able to reach a free trade agreement with the EU or risk further disruption of already laying off tens of thousands of workers. The country now is going to likely head into the worst economic downturn in over 40 years. In investment news, a recent recession is exposing the nature of the risky equity takeovers. A lot of these companies that are public, what happens is private equity companies, like think of it like private funds. They go out, take out a lot of debt with very high and heavy interest rates, and then they go out and buy private companies. Then they're not able to service the loans due to the fact that the debt is so I was just thinking in Spanish, cargado. There's just too much debt at too high of a price with the interest rate. Recent examples of this is J. Crew, Neiman Marcus, Hertz, and Chuck E. Cheese. And you can see all of these have actually gone into the bankruptcy protection due to the coronavirus. Facebook has a growing list of firms that are boycotting the platform due to the fact that they say that they're not doing enough to stop the spread of hate. There's a civil rights coalition and all major firms have put a pause to that, including big firms like Nike and Coca-Cola. Facebook's response to that was, they'll be back. International events. Resurgence of coronavirus cases have brought the global infection rate to 10.2 million, with deaths up to 502,000. Over 5.15 million have already recovered. U.S. does have the largest numbers, if you want to believe the numbers coming out of China, which are probably not correct. There are 2.59 million infections and 128,000 deaths. Gunmen in Pakistan attacked the Pakistan Stock Exchange in the city of Karachi on Monday. Separatist insurgents from a province called, let me see if I get this right, Balochistan, known as the Baloch Liberation Army. They killed 2 guards, but then the private security forces killed all 4 attackers. It's kind of like the FARC in Colombia. It's just kind of somebody that, or these anarchists, the rioters that we have now in the U.S. They want to take down the system because they don't like it. EU is excluding the U.S. from initial safe list nations to be able to travel from the EU as they start opening up their borders on Wednesday. Now you can travel in Europe for non-essential travel, but the U.S. cannot yet due to the fact, obviously they're saying it's the coronavirus. It's probably because the U.S. has barred Europeans from coming to the U.S. The 27-member bloc gave approval to that on Tuesday for travel for leisure and business. And an unusual fact this week, Guyana, which is a small country that was part of the British Empire. It was a colony of the great British Empire, which borders Venezuela. There's a dispute. Venezuela is saying that the border is somewhere, even though the Guyana is asking now the World Court to confirm the border that was drawn in 1899 arbitration, and obviously it has to do with oil. There's a lot of oil pockets that they found there near the coast, and if Venezuela can move the border, then they can get the oil, even though the border already exists. Turkana is a vast dry scrubland in northwest Kenya that's being ravaged now by locusts. It's on the borders of Uganda, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. I've been. It's absolutely beautiful. Residents are saying that there's large swarms of the locusts that are devouring and devastating farmland and grazing area, and soon it could bring conditions of famine to over 20 million people in the region. If you guys don't know as well, they found a big group of these also in Argentina, which is a problem as well. Northern Argentina is a big food producer as well as Brazil, and they can travel all the way down to Brazil. Amazon's Jeff Bezos is now worth nearly $172 billion. It's a new record for him as being the world's richest person in the world. He gave, this is after the divorce where he gave away his ex-wife Mackenzie Bezos, I don't know her new name, part of the stock. He now has 12% of the stock. She has 4%. She's worth $57 billion. She's the 12th richest person in the world. And he still owns 57 million in shares, which is about 12% of the company, which has soared at 56% this year. Beginning in August, giant retailer Walmart is going to be converting a lot of its parking lots into drive-in theaters to be able to watch movies, especially since the traditional movie houses like AMC are still closed due to the quarantine. And they're going to be doing it with Tribeca Enterprises, which is a Robert De Niro-backed media company, to be able to do that. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe here to the channel. Go ahead and leave your like there on the YouTube channel since it helps a lot the algorithm. We'll see you next week.